You're resilient until you're not. That's what a mental health expert said in the last fortnight in one of my committee hearings into mental health and suicide prevention. You're resilient until you're not. Well, no one can accuse my community of the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury of being anything but resilient. This is a community that knows natural disasters like few others: the 2019 bushfires, the 2020 flood, COVID and the 2021 flood. And people rose to the challenges they faced. They rallied, they cleaned up, they rebuilt, they pivoted, and then they did it again. They've done this since November 2019, when the smoke was so thick that people stayed away. They stayed away for months, yet businesses tried their best to keep workers on, or to get them back as soon as there were green shoots emerging in the bush and in the local economy. And even though the support that came didn't come fast, wasn't perfect, often we had to fight for it, and it left many people out. There was still gratitude and a belief that soon it would get better and that they would survive and thrive. There was still a sense of hope. But the mood has changed. With the latest lockdowns, retail and cafe owners have said to me in the last few days they are at a critical tipping point, with decisions needing to be made within days about whether they can keep going. These are not decisions that they should be forced to make, but it's come to this because of a total failure of this government to protect its citizens by getting quarantine right and having a proper vaccination rollout. We wouldn't be in this situation were it not for that, and it's also compounded by a failure of the state to help distribute the partial federal funding and state-funded packages to business and individuals. The lack of coordination between the state and federal payments in the system that has been put up by the Prime Minister means that people are holding off applying through Centrelink in case their small business, their micro-business, their sole trader, their partnership is eligible for a business grant. And that means that many have received no income since the end of June. They're in their 6th week of no income. They laugh at the comments that I heard the Prime Minister say in a media conference a few weeks ago that businesses have built up a buffer. The kindest response I have had from a small business owner is, "He's out of touch." The rest would not be acceptable in this chamber. I spent 25 years in business and I know what it's like in the recession of the 90s. I know what it was like in the GFC, and I've never seen anything like this, nor have long-running businesses, particularly tourism businesses in the Blue Mountains. The government's failure on vaccines and quarantines has led so many of them to the precipice. We're fortunate in Macquarie not to have had a large number of cases and, thank God, no deaths. And our hearts go out to the families who've lost loved ones. And I want to commend the member for Warrawa for her moving speech today about the losses her community is experiencing. But we can see it getting closer, and none of us should be in this situation. It is a direct consequence of the Morrison government's complacency. As one owner of several popular businesses across the mountains for more than 20 years tells me, over the last few years, because of fires, floods and lockdowns, we have as a family poured every last cent we have into keeping the business going. We have no more personal funds to inject. He says, "I've done all the paperwork for grants and funding. There's been no communication or funding provided. This week I have to make a decision about whether to continue trading or close down. If I close, it's forever." And the owner of another retail and cafe business in Katoomba warns he's looking at voluntary administration if the money he applied for weeks ago, when the details were finally released, doesn't come in by Monday. He has spent hours holding on the phone to speak with someone at Services New South Wales. One time it was 3 hours and 20 minutes in a single go. This is how small businesses are being treated. They are paying a terrible price for the Prime Minister's vaccine and quarantine failures. This is the Morrison government's idea of supporting small business, and it is bringing them to the brink. There are scores of similar stories across the tourist areas of the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury and across a range of businesses, any businesses that needs customers walking through the door. Another flaw in the support the government belatedly stumped up in its stubbornness not to bring back an improved version of the model everyone understood, that would be JobKeeper, is that the link between employer and employee is gone. And for businesses that are still able to operate, that really hurts. It's compounded for some businesses because government has failed to deliver a package to support the big attractions like Scenic World in the way that they have zoos and aquariums. They've just been left out. You cannot maintain major attractions like cable cars and railways without some funds. It doesn't happen for free. The promise or the hint of a tourism recovery campaign post-bushfires called for by the Mountains and Hawkesbury in January 2020 has never eventuated, and by the time the very latest funded campaign hits, operators are worried that they won't be around to benefit from it. And these business owners are locals. They live in our community, they employ locals. This is their home and the effect is far-reaching. It's the consequence of government not going fast enough or hard enough. We saw it in the wake of the fires and the floods, and we're seeing it now. And it's time the Morrison government stepped up to help New South Wales make sure this financial support gets out the door. Even then, there are going to be many who fall through the big gaps of eligibility of the available support, including people whose businesses were affected by the fires, who were told there'd be exceptions for them, but in reality they're missing out, businesses that are new, businesses that have grown and are now just closed. When I think about the Prime Minister's performance, I think about it in how he's helped small businesses, and I can't help but contrast it to the amazing achievements we have all seen of our Olympians. It's like being in an Olympic heat and holding back your best effort for the final. But the problem there is you might miss that race, you might miss that final, but this Prime Minister always holds back. He does either just enough to be able to tell people how good he is, but never throws everything at it. We saw this in the bushfires. Good on paper, big announcements, less than impressive on the ground. And you know, you need also to have done the preparation just to be at the starting gate. Our position was enviable last year. Low deaths, outbreaks that were tough but managed well by the states, especially Victoria. But while that was happening, the government didn't do the two jobs it had. It didn't shift from temporary hotel quarantine to secure, purpose-built quarantine. And it didn't plan how to get a jab in everyone's arm. Complacency, incompetence, a sense of being bulletproof, stubbornness, all three, who knows? All we know for sure is that the hard work on getting a mix of vaccines, on making sure there were different ways of getting them to different populations, just didn't happen. Now, it doesn't matter how many times you channel our Olympic victories and our achievements at the Olympics. If you haven't done the hard yards, you won't even make the final. And that's where we are now with the vaccination rollout. In my area, there are hundreds of people trying to get an appointment and struggling to find one. There are people following the advice, go and get vaccinated now. Well, they're trying. They are really trying. The first hurdle is to find availability, and the cumbersome online system that the government set up means many people are falling back into phoning around GPs. Just the extra load GPs don't need. And this is no reflection on our GPs, who have put up their hands and are doing all they can with the limited supply and the capacity that they have. The promise of pharmacies hasn't eventuated. There is no delivery through pharmacies. The booking system that they've created is as effective as its COVID app, the tracking app. Remember that. And people are turning to Facebook with appeals for somewhere that will vaccinate before October. Teachers are desperate to get vaccinated before they have to teach face-to-face in the hotspots. These are the people who want to do the right thing. But the problem is, of course, supply. We all know it. We have never had enough supply. No contingency, no room for error. What we are seeing on our worst day of COVID in Sydney is a failed vaccine rollout. We need mobile services in the mountains. We need our own hub. That's what will give people hope. Until then, we don't have any.